Is this an upgrade or a sideways move? Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. I am back fresh from my day off, and there is some interesting news to get into, so let's not waste any time. Not so long ago, I reported on Arsenal's interest in both Madueke and Nicholas Jackson. Now, while there recently hasn't been much news about Nicholas Jackson, the Madueke to Arsenal news does seem to be going on. So much to the point that I've actually seen a figure. And when figures start getting involved, that's when it stops just being like a tentative link or silly season or whatever, and all of a sudden you're starting to think, okay, there might be something in this because numbers are starting to fly around. So supposedly, according to the reports, Chelsea would be willing to sell Noni Madueke for £45 million. And that's kind of that's kind of good and bad at the same time, isn't it? £45 million kind of feels like what he's worth based on his performance, but based on his potential, you'd think it's got to be something north of 50. That's how it feels to me anyway. So tell me in the comments, regardless of whether you think we should keep him or not, do you think 45 mil for Noni Madueke to Arsenal is a good deal? Especially considering we got 60 plus mil out of them for Kai Havertz. Now, I'm totally in two minds about this transfer. Noni Madueke hasn't established himself as an undroppable, right? For instance, there are only a few untouchable players in our squad at the moment. You might argue the likes of Cucurella, Moises Caicedo, and despite his lack of form, I would say Cole Palmer remains in that group too. But Madueke has shown us flashes of brilliance with things like the hat-trick against Wolves after completely mugging off the town and the entire fan base the morning of the match. But in a lot of other games, I think Noni Madueke has flattered to deceive and always threatened to look like a wicked player and to be a wicked player. He's had a reasonable season for a player we bought for £35 million, and he's only, 22, 23, same ballpark as your Cole Palmers and your Nicholas Jacksons. So this is where it gets really difficult, right? Because I guess in isolation, based on the fact that we're looking to challenge for the Champions League on a consistent basis, try and win trophies, it doesn't feel like he's necessarily putting in enough on a season-long basis to justify keeping him around. But the thing is, the potential's there, isn't it? It's not difficult to see what a good player Noni Madueke can be on his day. And I do worry that should we offload him to the right manager, that they can get a lot of end product out of him that we've otherwise been missing. So the links to Arsenal are interesting, aren't they? Because it's not like Noni Madueke is going to leave Chelsea and go straight into Arsenal's first team. And obviously that's because they've got Bukayo Saka, who is arguably, behind Salah, the best right winger in the Premier League. His numbers are great, his attitude's great, his work rate is great, and there's still a lot more to come from him. So for Arsenal, it makes complete sense because I think that they definitely need some support for Bukayo Saka because he has played an outrageous amount of football in the last 5 years. It's crazy. So there's definitely logic in bringing in a player like Noni Madueke to support him in that role and maybe even to push him a little bit to get even more spectacular numbers and performance out of him. But for Noni Madueke, is that a sideways move or is that a progressive move? Now, the other part of that conversation to be had is Noni Madueke, as we've recently seen, can feature on the left. Is Noni Madueke a better option on the left wing for Arsenal than Leandro Trossard or Gabriel Martinelli? If there's any Arsenal fans watching this video, I would love to know what you think. So please let me know in the comments if you ship the idea that Madueke is a better left wing option than the other guys you've currently got. So do we think in this proposed scenario that Noni Madueke gets into Arsenal's first team over the likes of Bukayo Saka or Leandro Trossard or Gabriel Martinelli? On the left, maybe, but I would argue there's not enough of a sample size of Madueke on that left side, and there's also definitely not enough end product from there to look at him and go, yeah, he's a left wing option. So it's a weird one, isn't it? It is a strange one indeed. I'm not super sold on the idea that it is a progressive move for Madueke, but maybe it's a good time for him to look for a new challenge, right? I mean, personally, if an offer came in, you think he'd probably want to go to Newcastle because not only is that a first team that he could likely get in, it's also one with a really good progressive manager that are building a young, hungry squad as well, and they've still got Champions League next season. They've just come away winning a Carabao Cup, and it is a really good time to be part of that team. So taking away the fact whether I want to sell Madueke or not, which is a difficult one, I'll get into it a little bit, going to Arsenal doesn't necessarily, even just from a trying to look at it from a neutral perspective, doesn't even really seem like the best option for him. And as per my thumbnail, what we have to talk about next, of course, is who are we going to replace him with? Now, the easy answer is Madueke has been featuring predominantly on the right wing, so you would have thought Esteval Willian comes in to take that spot. But Esteval Willian is coming in to support Pedro Neto on that right wing. Although Pedro Neto played a lot on the left at the start of the season, he's really starting to be trusted on that right wing spot, and he's getting goals. He's looking like a really important player, like he really, really belongs there. So Madueke's kind of already lost his spot on the right wing, apart from, potential, rotational options and, cup games and this and that and the other. He might get in there. But with both players fit at the moment, truth be told, you put in Neto on that right wing. And the fact that we've just finalised the signings of Jamie Gittins and João Pedro for the left-hand side, all of a sudden, Noni Madueke doesn't exactly look like he fits, does it? So, rather than thinking about replacing Noni Madueke as a positional player, like left or right wing, I think we've just got to consider him as like an attacking midfielder and where else in the squad needs reinforcing. And the truth is, it's kind of the centre of attack, isn't it? We don't have an able deputy for Cole Palmer, and we absolutely just don't. And with two strong looking, I say strong looking, we'll see how strong Esteval Willian is looking in the Palmeiras game, but with two strong looking options on the right and two strong looking options on the left, including backup with Tyreek George as well, who will still probably be in the squad, the centre of our attack looks like the only spot where we really need any support at the moment, and it doesn't look like Madueke will be favoured in that position. So, the other links that do seem to be continuing and not going away are the links to West Ham's Mohammed Kudus, formerly of Ajax. Sorry guys, I'm going to interrupt the video just for a second. If you are enjoying the content and would like to see more, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing the video, or subscribing to my YouTube channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Every single click that you guys do means the world to me, and I'm so excited about the community that I'm starting to build here. At the time of recording, I'm sat at 84 subs, and that is after 30 days of being a YouTuber, so I am so happy with how it's going so far. I've made some new friends, and I'm having loads of really interesting conversations with people that are starting to appear in my comments, and you guys are absolute legends. Thank you so much. Oh, and if you do subscribe, don't forget to hit that little bell icon so you can find out exactly when I'm uploading, if that is interesting to you. Alright, sorry, I'll get back to the video now. I did a little bit of a chat about Kudus on one of my news videos a few videos ago, maybe last week before. And truth be told, I've looked into it a lot more now, so we've got a lot to get through. But truth be told, I'm not super sold on the optics of Mohammed Kudus, and that was largely based on how much it was going to be. So I've had a really good chat with some guys in YouTube threads, and some people have given me a lot more information. So what I'd seen is Mohammed Kudus has an 80 million release clause, and I'm like, no way, man, that's well too expensive. At that point, it's basically just as worth giving a chance to Noni Madueke again. 80 million is a statement signing, as I am about to get into what we've seen from Mohammed Kudus in the last season in isolation. Obviously, there is more to it than that, but the last season in isolation, it doesn't look like he's an £80 million player. But I've been reliably informed by some excellent conversations I've had with people across YouTube that supposedly West Ham would be willing to accept a lower fee. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting. So Tottenham are also very interested in Mohammed Kudus, so much to the point that they've just had a £55 million bid rejected. So it looks like it's north of 60 is going to win his signature. So do Chelsea hijack Tottenham in order to get Mohammed Kudus on our books? While the passionate football fan in me says, yes, I absolutely love giving Tottenham a bad day, please do that. It'd be the Willian thing all over again, and that was amazing. But the more analytical side of me wasn't so sure, so I've done a bit of digging and I've produced this graphic. Now, what I will say is this is the last season in isolation. There is obviously more to it than that. For example, Jamie Gittins didn't have an amazing season last season, but the season before was really, really good. So you have to think that it's not just about the numbers that they've got in the last season. Obviously, in this case, West Ham didn't do particularly well, are really struggling under Graham Potter, and it's not unreasonable to think that Kudus might perform better in a better team that have more dynamic and creative players around him. But let's have a little look through this table and see what the stats are saying about Kudus versus Madueke last season. So, interestingly enough, they played the exact same amount of matches with 32. But Mohammed Kudus featured for almost an extra 600 minutes, which makes some of those diminishing returns a little bit more suspect. Madueke scored 7 goals and Kudus only managed 5. So, Madueke didn't have a terrible season, and ultimately he's managed to get 7 goals in 600 less minutes than Mohammed Kudus managed to get 5. So, just from the initial optics, right? Like I say, I understand there's more nuance to the conversation than just, last season, whatever, but so far the stats don't exactly seem to fall in Kudus' favour. They both managed 3 assists. Okay, cool. At least at that point, it's a base level and we're not looking at losing anything. Key passes per 90 is a really interesting one because, again, Madueke comes out on top with almost 0.5 more assists per match than Mohammed Kudus. And again, bear in mind, Mohammed Kudus played a lot more minutes. XG and XA, lots of people aren't really into this stat, I get it, but I featured it here anyway for any of you guys that buy into it because I do, for, largely. Again, for me, it's like it's a balanced conversation, right? XG doesn't tell the whole story, but there is enough to say that, for instance, the best players outperform their XG. And regardless of whether you buy into XG or not, that is a trend. Do you know what I mean? That is literally a trend that is out there for everyone to see. And in both of these metrics, Noni Madueke does come on top again. So Kudus' first win against Madueke in this table comes in attempted passes per 90, with Kudus coming out on top by nearly half a pass. So essentially, based on these stats, Kudus attempts half a pass more than Madueke does per 90 minutes. But things do start to pick up for Kudus a little bit more now, and maybe this tells us a bit about the kind of player that we're looking for versus the one that we've got with Madueke. Kudus' pass completion is 89.7%, which is obviously very, very close to the 90th percentile, which puts him up there with some of the best passers in Europe. And Madueke's drops quite a lot by 5 points to 84%, so Kudus is a better passer than Noni Madueke. And in both attempted dribbles per 90 and successful dribbles per 90, Kudus comes out on top as well. So this is the thing, isn't it? Madueke has scored more goals than Mohammed Kudus, and they've got the same amount of assists. Madueke has had more chances than Kudus to score and assist as well. These stats maybe start to tell the story that Kudus' output was maybe affected by the guys around him, because ultimately in passes and dribbles he's quite significantly in front of Noni Madueke. This is where it starts to get nuanced and complicated, because on the face of it, Madueke looks like he's obviously had a much better season, but Kudus is doing more of the stuff successfully that normally leads to chances. So that is where the argument can be had that maybe if you put Kudus in a Chelsea team with the likes of Fernandes, Cole Palmer, Reece James, Neto all around him, maybe some of those things that he's doing turn into better chances and turn into more XG and XA. This is kind of to be expected. The next stat where Kudus falls is possession lost per 90. But at the end of the day, he's attempting significantly more dribbles, so it kind of makes sense that he's going to lose the ball a bit more often. Kudus is more likely to be the focal point of that West Ham team than Madueke is to Chelsea. So although that dispossession stat is really, really high, again, there are potentially mitigating factors which makes it make sense. For instance, if you put Madueke in that West Ham team, maybe that stat is really high as well, because Madueke would easily be one of the better players in that West Ham team. They would focus on him more, and therefore he'd have more opportunities to lose the ball. And the last one is offsides per 90, with Kudus as being at 0.63 and Madueke's only being at 0.23. That's a difficult one to argue, I guess. With Madueke's XG being higher, you would say that that is Madueke getting into attacking positions more often, and maybe that's a discipline thing that Kudus needs to learn to make sure that he's being onside more often. So it's interesting, isn't it? It's quite balanced. It's nuanced. It's not as simple as look at these stats, the black and white, they tell the story that Madueke is better than Kudus. There are little narratives in there that start to tell you, maybe Kudus is really suffering from being in that West Ham team, but the ultimate problem that I have with it is, for the money that we're talking about, 60 million plus, that is not clear enough of a difference to say, yes, Kudus is definitely a better option than Madueke. So the other thing that is very interesting about both of these guys is where they played positionally. Madueke featured on the right wing for Chelsea 81% of all of his minutes last season, while Mohammed Kudus was split really almost very evenly between left wing, right wing, centre attack, and even centre forward. So what that tells you in a nutshell is that Kudus is a much more versatile player than Madueke is. We're seeing Madueke on the left and being like, we're not sure if he can be there. But West Ham are confident enough in Kudus to play in every single one of those positions. And I don't think if Madueke went to West Ham, for instance, that'd be the same. So that is what leads me to believe that if we are going in for someone like Kudus, it is probably to support Cole Palmer in that centre attacking role, rather than spending loads of time on the right, loads of time on the left. A player like Kudus could be being brought in to feature in lots of different positions, and that kind of to be his role. But we'll have to see, won't we? We'll have to see. After all of this, looking at Madueke's stats last season and looking at Kudus' stats, trying to think of the different situations that they've been in, Chelsea finished 4th. I think West Ham finished 14th or 16th, I can't remember, but it was pretty low. There is obviously some sort of player in there. My issue is to spend, if we If we spend 80 million to get him and just do that release clause, that is mental, and I don't sign off on that at all. If there is some sort of swap deal that can be done, or not necessarily a swap deal, because I know football isn't crazy about swaps, what will normally happen is one player will get sold and another player will get sold to the same team, but they like to keep those deals separate, don't they? So if we sell Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall to West Ham, for instance, or even a Robert Sanchez, then it's less than paying 60 mil. Do you know what I mean? We're just looking at it and we're like, okay, so what that really is if we sell Sanchez or Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall for 30 mil and we buy Kudus for 60, that's only cost us 30 on the books. That makes it more palatable if that's the kind of deal that we're looking at. But if we just go straight in and pay 60 mil for Kudus, it feels a bit much for me. Although what I will say is we are not inundated with other obvious targets in order to fill that centre attacking role. If you guys have got any ideas for players that you think should be there to support Cole Palmer in the 10 next season, drop them in the comments. I'd love to have a chat with you about it. So that's kind of it for this video, guys. I will start wrapping it up there. Whilst the Noni Madueke news is not concrete yet, we have seen a figure, and that is when things start to feel a little bit more real. With Esteval Willian coming in to perform on that right-hand side and maybe in the 10 as well, and we've just bought 2 guys for the left, with Pedro Neto performing so well, it does kind of make sense to lose Madueke. And if I had to lose one of the two out of Madueke and Neto right now, I would choose Madueke. He will bring in more money, and he ultimately feels like he offers less to the team than Pedro Neto does. Is Kudus the right player to bring in to replace him? That I'm still not really sure about. I'm leaning towards no, but what I will say, if there are no other options, I mean, it's a long window, right? The window hasn't even really kicked off yet because the Club World Cup's still going on. You can imagine as soon as that Club World Cup is over, whether we win it or we get thrown out, things are going to start happening thick and fast. So there is a long time to get all these deals done and for new transfer targets to start appearing. But as it is right now, I think what it looks like Chelsea are trying to do is get all of their buying in business done really, really quickly so they can focus on pre-season with their new squad and then spend the rest of the window offloading players. I hope, because if we don't, then what we're going to end up with is players changing in the changing rooms again, and nobody wants that. So yeah, nice one, guys. Thanks very much for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to keep my ear to the ground as usual for any news that's coming out. I will also be releasing my match preview for Chelsea versus Palmeiras in the Club World Cup very soon. So keep it locked for that one. It's going to be interesting. Nice one, guys. I hope you had a wicked day. Can't wait to catch up with you soon. Take it easy. Peace.